What up, everybody? I am Ari Temkin. This is Showtime on Phantom, where we are bringing you to the center of the Dallas sports discussion. Why not? Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for hitting that share button. And yeah, it's been a bit. It's been a couple of days since I've been on, so thank you all for your patience as I was doing a lot of travel. Went to Austin, went to Houston, so I've been traveling all around this great state of Texas. No matter where you're watching, make sure to hit that share button, post your comments, and I will get to them as quickly and expediently as I possibly can. Also have what I think is a really cool video coming out in a little bit on DeMarcus Lawrence, why he's unsigned, and more than that, what the Cowboys really are doing this offseason. And if they are really going all in. But I figured we'd start today with the latest on Robert Quinn. Robert Quinn, the talented pass rusher who visited with the Cowboys last week, is visiting today with the New Orleans Saints. This is obviously bad news if you want Robert Quinn to sign with the Cowboys or to be traded with to the Cowboys. I think it's pretty simple, and that is... if the Saints, I don't think the Cowboys were willing to offer him a long-term extension. I think when he met with the Cowboys, they kind of said, yeah, we're excited to have you here. This is how you'll fit in, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, let's get this thing going. And I think he was like, yeah, but what about the long-term deal? And, you know, because his contract is up after next season, he's going to be due, I think, $13 million next year. So I'm sure he's looking at this saying, hey, I'd like to cash in again right now while I can before I, play out next year and aren't going to be able to get that type of money in the open market, right? So I think the Cowboys were like, no, we're all set. We're not really in position to offer you a long-term extension at this point. We'd just like to trade for you and have you see how you'd fit in here and allow you to cash in that way. So we'll see if the Saints are willing to bite, right? It kind of comes down to, will the Saints offer him a long-term extension? Something the Cowboys are probably uninterested in doing. I think that's the right move. I think Robert Quinn is really good, tons of talent, and would be a tremendous add to this defensive line, especially when you consider that you're assuming DeMarcus Lawrence is going to be there. But I'm not going to give him a extension beyond this season to do it. I'd rather, again, have him motivated and playing at a high level to play for that next contract than coming here on the down part of his career, on the downslope of his career, for tons of money. I understand Cowboys fans are enamored with Robert Quinn because he's the latest guy. This name has come up, so now Cowboys fans want him. And look, he is effective. He's very good. And if you pair him with DeMarcus Lawrence, that's a pretty disruptive defensive line, and it's pretty good disruptive defensive ends. I just don't think it's willing. I wouldn't be willing to give him a long-term extension. Maybe the Saints will, and maybe that's why he's visiting with them. But I think he's trying to get that in tow so that, that's sort of what he wants in terms of being traded. The Dolphins picked up the $1 million option on him. He's on the books this season for $13 million, but will cost $0 against the cap if they release him. So they're trying to trade him. I think the compensation, whatever it is fine. It'll work out for the Cowboys. I don't think there's any issue. The only issue I think that there is in terms of holding this thing up is giving him an extension, which again, I'm with the Cowboys. I wouldn't do it. So would you? Post your comments. Would you sign? I understand everybody wants to sign Robert Quinn. I think the Cowboys should sign Robert Quinn. Here's the question though: would you sign him if it meant having to give him an extension? That's the question. John Martin says, Ari, thank God you're back. I don't like the other guy. LOL. TJ Carpenter, the other guy. Brian Sexton says, if Dallas doesn't get Robert Quinn, is there another pass rusher that Dallas is interested in? Yeah, I mean, low-risk type guys in terms of free agency. Remember, Robert Quinn isn't a free agent. He's basically being sought after in a trade because he's currently the property of the Miami Dolphins. And the Dolphins are looking to facilitate a trade so they can get something for him. Because if they release him, they get no compensatory pick. Michael Fletcher says maybe a 2-year extension. Charles Groh says, I'm extremely happy with the signing, talking about Georgia Iloka. which I'll get into here in a moment. Jesse Truitt says 3-year extension with a team option for after year 2. Dolphins have to pay some of his cap. This covers your ass if Gregory finally does enough to be gone for good. Um, I, you know, me personally, I would not be interested in a 3-year extension. I, I, I'm with the Cowboys here wholeheartedly. Like I am totally on board with the Cowboys saying no thanks in terms of giving him a long-term extension. I think Robert Quinn's really good, can be very helpful for the Cowboys. He's played 8 years in the NFL. He's going to be 29 when the season starts. His best days are clearly behind him, but he still can be an effective pass rusher. I don't think there's any question about that. It's just whether or not you're going to pay to find that out by locking him up in long-term deal. And it's not even just that. It's more, he wants the security, and if you're the Cowboys, you'd rather have him be highly motivated. Joe Tranchina, I thought Tank going to have surgery. Won't he be out for half the season anyway? Well, he's going to be out. He's going to miss 3 to 4 months after having the surgery. So, yeah, that certainly is in the back of the minds of Cowboys fans, too, in terms of, getting DeMarcus Lawrence back, but we shall see. Let's see here. What else? Charles Grouse says, I say no more than a 5. Well, I'm not talking. I think the trade compensation is negligible, right? They're either going to trade a late round pick or they're going to swap positions in a round, right? Like I think that's pretty much where the Cowboys are going to be in terms of compensation. I don't think draft compensation is what's questionable here. I think the questionable component of the Cowboys in their pursuit of Robert Quinn is not giving him a long-term extension, which I agree with. All right, Chase Blood says, I like the addition, but we still need to go full-on DT or D-end in the draft. Terry Lingley, 1-year team friendly. Chris Armstrong, what are the chances, as in like 50% or higher, that Robert Quinn's on our team this year? I mean, I'd say, I don't really, it kind of comes down to, will the Saints offer him a long-term extension? He's visiting with the Saints today. If the Saints come in here and say, yeah, we'll give you a long-term extension, then he's going to be with the Saints. If the Saints did it, it'd be a stupid move because they've got $43 million against the cap. They're paying Drew Brees next year. So they're already leveraged to the hilt against the cap anyways, and I believe they're signing Jared Cook. So I don't know that they have the long-term ability to sign Robert Quinn. Now, maybe they do, but I'm not sure. So, look, I would assume that's why the Cowboys and the Dolphins don't have a deal yet for Quinn, because the Cowboys wouldn't give in terms of giving him a long-term extension. So maybe it'll be different for the Saints. I'm not sure. Charles Grow, okay, on Tank's surgery, do you think that's why the Cowboys are holding off on the signing? Talking about on signing DeMarcus Lawrence, why they're holding off on that for as the surgery? I think they're holding off on the signing him because I'm not really sure, but maybe because Tank wants too much over too long of a time period. I don't. If there's anything, they have a greater need to get that deal done with DeMarcus Lawrence quicker, because it seems like he's not going to have that surgery done until he has that contract. So, no, I don't think that's the case. I think the Cowboys don't think his value is where he believes his value is. They're negotiating a contract. DeMarcus Lawrence trying to use surgery hanging over as leverage. So we'll see. TJ Carpenter, bitches be tripping. Jerry Jones. Let's see here. Tyson, West Coast Cowboy in the house. What up, Tyson? David Licht, fire the coach. Coach needs to go. Agreed. Who's the best defensive lineman in the draft? Quinn and Williams. Nick Bosa. Joey Bosa's brother. Quinn and Williams from Alabama. Clemson's got a couple. There's Josh Allen from Kentucky. These are all guys that will be gone within the first 5 picks of the draft, so probably won't last to 58. But certainly some guys the Cowboys have been rumored to be interested in at 58. I do think that's where the Cowboys go at 58. All right, so the opening rant lays on Robert Quinn to the Cowboys is that he's visiting with the Saints today. If the Saints offer him a long-term extension, I'm willing to bet that that's where he ends up. The Cowboys, I do not think, want to give him a long-term extension. I think the compensation's negligible, whatever it is, in terms of giving up either a late-round pick or swapping spots in a round. I think they'll figure it out. The difference, the reason why he's not with the Cowboys currently, is because I think the Cowboys don't want to give him a long-term extension, and I agree with that. I wouldn't. The Cowboys' approach in free agency is find guys that are motivated, that can outperform their value. So Robert Quinn's a guy that if you don't sign him to a long-term extension, you don't have to pay him half of what he's owed by the Dolphins, $6-7 million, whatever it is. You're talking about a guy that can now outperform value. Whereas, if you offer him a long-term extension, now how much does he want? Do you want $15 million a year, $12 million a year, $10 million a year, whatever he wants? It's probably more than the Cowboys want to pay, especially because they want guys that are motivated. All right, so that's the opening rant. All right, now let's move on to the bigger topic at hand, which is the moves the Cowboys have made. The moves that they already have made, have they done enough? The Cowboys done enough so far this offseason based on the moves that they've already made. They signed Randall Cobb. They brought in George Aloka over the weekend. So they signed a new strong safety. Randall Cobb, a new receiver they brought into the mix. Kerry Hyder, Christian Covington. Those are the four guys they've signed, right, off the top of my head. So Kerry Hyder and Christian Covington, kind of a defensive end 3 technique type players. George Aloka, versatile, played both free safety and strong safety. Fits the profile more of a free safety, but will most likely be playing strong safety for the Cowboys, assuming he could beat out Jeff Heath for the starting job. And then Randall Cobb, a guy that's projected out as both the slot receiver, but also a guy that can play outside. Errol Berenzi on the Dallas Cowboys Americas team page says yes, they have. David Licht says they haven't done enough. Cody Arnold says, was Aloka hurt last year or just couldn't win the job? Well, he was cut by the Bengals. So this is what I find to be interesting. Jalen Ferguson, is he still in trouble? No. He's not still in trouble. He just had multiple sort of questionable things hanging over his head. That's why he couldn't go to the combine. But Jalen Ferguson's a guy that could potentially be available from La Tech at 58 when the Cowboys take. And I would really like him because one of the most important correlators between success in college to success in the NFL is production at the defensive end position. And he's the all-time leading sack. He's the all-time sacks leader in NCAA history, Jalen Ferguson. Okay, so going back to Aloka. So the Cowboys played the Bengals in the preseason last year. Aloka played in that game, played well in that game, and then was cut basically the day after that game. It was interesting because it was like, well, the Cowboys clearly have a need at safety, so you wonder if they'll take a flyer on George Aloka, who wasn't going to be expensive and could fit a need. The Cowboys claimed he didn't fit the profile of the safeties that they need. That's what they've said of all these guys. Not really the type of safety we want. Now, what that is he has the body of being a strong safety, but he's more of a free safety. He's not a hard hitter, heavy hitter, in the box kind of guy. He's a safety in every aspect of the word. He's your safety valve. He doesn't miss tackles. He plays off the line of scrimmage, and he's played center field in the course of his career and is sure-handed as a tackler. Again, I think the Cowboys are going to try to use him at strong safety, but it kind of comes down to will he beat Jeff Heath out for the job. So, he certainly should be an upgrade from Heath, because of the fact that he's a sure-handed tackler, which we saw Jeff Heath not great, especially this past year. But remember, the Cowboys basically said would rather have Heath than Aloka last year. So the only thing that changed really is that Aloka is now available again after being available at this time last year, and Heath is probably worse than where they thought he was. Steven Gibson says, what's the status of D-Law? The status is he's unsigned. I wish I could tell you why other than contract negotiations. But the Cowboys need to get that thing done and done quickly because clearly he's upset and unsigned, and his agent is apparently upset too. Let's see here. TJ Carpenter says, that joke doesn't work for John Elway because whatever you're talking about, the answer to what would John Elway do is always get shit-faced on a golf course. It's fair. Jeff Capone says, what up, Ari? What's up, Jeff? How are you? Have the Cowboys done enough so far this offseason? Take answers to those questions here for the next 10 minutes or so. Let's start with Randall Cobb. I love the addition of Randall Cobb. I think here's a guy that fits the profile of a player you need. Is he an upgrade from Cole Beasley? No, because Beasley's a true slot receiver and probably gives you more production out of there. Plus, their health factor. Cobb hasn't been healthy and he's getting older. But obviously, for the money, Cobb versus Cole Beasley, it's pretty good in terms of what Cole Beasley needed on an annual basis versus Randall Cobb. Cobb can also play outside and inside too, and that's the thing that I think the Cowboys wanted the most was the ability to be flexible with Amari Cooper to play him outside or inside. So now they have got two guys in Cobb or Cooper that can play both the X receiver and the slot Y receiver. So I think that's obviously good. David Puneno, Chris Richard will get the best out of Aloka. Sure. Just like he got the best out of Jeff Heath. I always find that funny. Like, people give ultimate credit to coaches to bring in players and then, transform those players but like don't acknowledge like the players they didn't transform because it doesn't fit the narrative. Like, Chris Richard could take any player in the secondary and make him great. Except for all the guys that he didn't. Like, Rob Marinelli does that, except for like Coney Ely and a bunch of other guys that the Cowboys brought in that weren't effective on the defensive line. I'm not saying, he's not a good coach. I think he is. I just think we overrate the amount of impact that a coach can have on a player. Barry Griffith says, not yet in terms of have the Cowboys done enough so far this offseason because the D-line is still a question. Yeah, I think that's fair, especially because until he signs, DeMarcus Lawrence is unsigned and he needs to have surgery. David Irving's obviously out, but Randy Gregory, we're not really sure what his future holds. Now, I've heard from a lot of people who know seemingly that it's not going to be as bad as we think it is, that it could be as bad as just 4 games. Like, that could be the worst of it. We'll see. But there's a lot hanging up in the air in terms of that position, and obviously it's a position of need because it's one of the most important positions on defense. Michael Fletcher says, I'd rather have Kaba instead of Beasley. Well, you're wrong. Sam Polson, need more D-line help and some O-line help. Yeah. O-line help's interesting because from a numbers perspective, I don't know that they're going to be signing anybody else. And I don't disagree with it, but they've committed to Cam Fleming as their swing tackle. So then you add, Joe Looney, who's going to be a backup most likely. And then, they re-signed, what's the other guy they brought in late that started some games for him this year. So from a numbers perspective, there's just not many more you can add where these guys are going to make the team. Anthony Galashaw says, I'd rather have Beasley than Cobb. Yes, you would. So would everybody. But not if numbers being equal, right? It kind of comes down to the compensation. So if D-Law doesn't sign his franchise tag, who's rushing the passer? If D-Law doesn't sign his franchise tag and doesn't play for the Cowboys next year, then it's going to be a rough season because he's a game wrecker, and the only game wrecker they have on defense, and you just can't find somebody like that just available right now. It's just going to be difficult to think unless like a Khalil Mack happens, and then you could trade 2 first-round picks for a guy like Khalil Mack, but I don't think it's going to happen. Zach Cazos says we need to draft a right tackle. In my opinion, I don't think they pay Lyle next year with what right tackles are making right now. Yeah, but again, now from a numbers perspective, they have everybody coming back along the offensive line that was here last year. So, taking draft capital and putting that into the offensive line doesn't make as much sense considering it's going to be difficult to think that any of those guys won't make the team. So I don't disagree with the premise, but I just think from a numbers perspective, they're going to be so keen in on, defensive tackle, defensive end, safety, and then, perhaps tight end and wide receiver too, that I'm not sure they're going to be looking along the offensive line. Not saying they shouldn't, just saying they won't because they have too many. The numbers just don't make sense. TJ Carpenter says Lawrence can sign his franchise tender at the last second, then have surgery, and then get paid to not play, correct? That's a tremendous amount of leverage. It is, except for what he could be potentially giving up in his next deal. Right? If he chooses to do that, which is what people have suggested he could do, use the surgery as leverage to hold out as long as possible, and then he could get paid to basically not play. But then how would he be viewed in the open market? Had 4 surgeries in 5 years. Does he think that the number he's saying no to right now will get better next year after sitting out and having a fourth surgery in 5 seasons? I don't know. Maybe he will. But that's a major risk he's taking. I mean, I'm assuming the Cowboys have offered him in the neighborhood of $20 million a year with $60 million guaranteed, and maybe the difference is that Lawrence wants 6 years instead of 5, and $80 million instead of $60 million, and that's where that's where it's being held up. The Cowboys, TJ Carpenter says the Cowboys have a soft vegan taco D line, which, as we all know, is the worst kind of taco. Absolutely. Sam Polson, why is Barry not signed? Because I don't think the Cowboys liked his, like the physical. Like I think the Cowboys doctors looked at him and said, no. Jance Mason, we're going to land Quinn. If Quinn doesn't get an offer of a long-term extension from the Saints, then probably. If there's a team that steps up that says to Robert Quinn, we'll give you an extension, then that's the team that's going to get him. I don't think the Cowboys will or should. Roy Winder, hello. What about going after Sue? Do you think the Cowboys will go after Sue? How much money does Sue want? Ask yourself that question. How much money does Sue want? And now ask yourself the next question, which is, do you think the Cowboys will sign Sue? I think Sue would be a fantastic addition to the Cowboys. I think the Cowboys have a pretty good idea of what they could spend in the open market, and I don't think Ndamukong Suh at 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 million is going to get it done. Let's see here. Dusty Brennan says we need Quinn, period. I mean, I think Quinn would be a great addition. I would not give him a long-term extension if I'm the Cowboys. It's nonsensical. I'd rather have Sue for this year, $10 million or $15 million, whatever he has, than sign Robert Quinn to a long-term extension. Jaime Jamie Eccles says, hell no, no Sue. Yeah, he costs too much. And again, I think Sue would be a great addition. I mean, he's fantastic, especially for the interior of a defensive line. I think he costs too much money. The Cowboys don't spend much money. That's the problem. Ryan Dean Leong says, can we sign D. Law first? Yes. Any other questions, people? Let me answer my own question. Have the Cowboys done enough so far this offseason? Yeah, why not? As I've stated, I don't think personnel is their issue. I think their issue is coaching and being flexible enough to adapt and grow based on the defenses and the offenses that you're seeing. You have to adjust what you're doing to the team you're playing. You can't just show up and say, this is the type of team we have. So I don't think that personnel is the problem. I think the Cowboys have good personnel, and I think the addition of Cobb, the ability for them to be multiple with Amari Cooper and Randall Cobb, like that's great. Would I like to see them add a Robert Quinn? Yeah, absolutely. Would I like to see them add a Ndamukong Suh? Absolutely. Those guys along the defensive line would be disruptive, especially because I do think that's a position that needs more talent. But let's just assume DeMarcus Lawrence signs, Randy Gregory misses 4 games. You still have a really good and robust defensive line, right? So I think the Cowboys have done enough so far this offseason. But it really comes down to this idea of if they're going all in, then why haven't they signed DeMarcus Lawrence yet? Because them going all in basically starts and ends with DeMarcus Lawrence. At any rate, I'm Ari Temkin. This is Showtime on Phantom, where we bring you to the center of the Dallas sports discussion. Appreciate you all being a part of the show today and every day. Shout out to Jitty Yeary, Michael Fletcher. Shout out to Chris Bennett and Cody Arnold, Anthony Galashaw, Charles Grau, Cody Arnold, Bob Heck, Anthony Galashaw, I said him twice, Jesse Truitt, Albert Carazosa, Jamie Eccles, Charles Jackson, and all of you. You guys make this show what it is. Bobby Morehouse. So thank you all for being a part of this show today and every day right here on Phantom, where we're bringing you to the center of the Dallas sports discussion. Other than that, everybody, I'm out.